Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever you happenstance in this Truth Bomb riff. I am joined on this, I guess it's Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, by my good friend, my amigo, the wonderful Egberto Willies. And I just had to talk to you on the flip side of No Kings. I wanted to find out first and foremost how everything went for you. Tell us about what happened.
First of all, thank you for having me, Patrick. It is going. It I was so impressed. I did a whole lot of work on the event. I covered it. I did some newscasts on it with WBAI in New York. It went much better than we expected it to go. We had more
Fantastic.
people than we expected. So it all went well. Of course, the next thing is going to be the follow through. And I heard about the 7 million people that showed up. I understand that it's likely more than that when all the numbers are counted. But that said, I think all of us who participated have got to be proud of what was actually done on that day.
How many people do you think you had turn out?
Between 1,050 to 1,100 is what I think. Our official count by the time the police did it was 850, but we had a lot more coming in and a constancy. I mean, it was just amazing. We had streets lying down for over, for quarter mile or so on all directions. So it was amazing.
Well, that's huge because, of course, Kingwood is not your what most people would perceive as a no king sort of community. Can you
Not
kind
at
of
all.
describe? Yeah, please describe what that means in terms of
King
numbers.
Kingwood is where the Tea Party comes, where the Tea Party, Ted Cruz, and all these guys come to raise money. And I'm talking about having a well-established conservative machine here in Kingwood. And it's a machine that is broken now because the last town hall that Dan Crenshaw had was a disaster for Dan Crenshaw because, again, when the people showed up, and people that show up are the people who want change. And when he was shocked at a town hall that normally gets maybe 50 people to 100, he got over 500 people at his town hall, all of them screaming at, or most of them screaming at him. We had some other events, same outcome. We had several No Kings, well, we had the Two Kings events previous to this, more people than ever expected. I ran along with that. Well, I should say many of us ran. Some professors and students ran Occupy Kingwood back in the Occupy days. And we would have been happy with 25, 30 people every weekend that we did it.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we would have been happy with that. And then on the last day when we had close to between 75 and 100 people, we were ecstatic to get that kind of response in Kingwood. To have women come together, older women come together and organize this area and pull not only older women, older men, mid women, and Gen Z. In fact, I have about 8 to 10 interviews that I'm putting together in one piece that's going to show the thoughts of Gen Zs in this area. And like I said, it was an all-around success that showed that people are, in fact, waiting or wanting something to happen. And I think the failure of in this case, the Democratic Party, is to really have had, and I know this wasn't a Democratic event, but this is something that needs to be fed. And I think where they are dropping the ball is after you show that there are this many people active, we're approaching that 3.5% that Chenahawk, I think, speaks about. We have to be ready when these people are activated to give them something to do and to have a plan as to put us in office. And I'm talking about whether you call yourself a Democrat, a progressive, a DSA, whoever you call yourself. When we get into power, this is what we're going to do to make things better for you. And that's what I'm not seeing from the leadership of the Democratic Party.
Well, boy, you hit the nail on the head with that, and that's what I was curious about. But before I move into more of the details about what you mean by that in context of some of the things that I'm saying as well, because I'd love to share some things with you at the appropriate time. But I am curious about the state of Texas in general on No King's Day. I saw pictures from Austin that seemed to be enormous, and same with Dallas, and I think Houston had quite a bit of a
Yes,
large
yeah.
turnout as well. And in fact, I got to be honest with you, Egberto, the most lively city that I experienced when I made my first documentary film called Forward 13 Waking Up the American Dream. I had traveled through about 27 Occupy encampments from the Northwest all the way through the country, all the way to
Hmm.
the Northeast corridor up into DC and New York. But I can assure you, the most lively group of people was Houston, Texas. So I'm
Yes.
curious how you felt about what happened throughout the state of
Well,
Texas on Saturday.
well, I wasn't at the big Houston event at City Hall, but it was big. I had a lot of friends who actually spoke like you did at your event in I think Utah. Uh,
I was Salt Lake
we
City.
Salt Lake City, Utah, and in Houston, Texas, we had a lot of speakers, several of them that I knew personally, and it was a large event. But here's what diluted that event somewhat in Houston because it was big. Don't get me wrong now. But Houston, as you know, being from here, is a huge area. And we had so many events with thousands of people. We had Kingwood, you know where Kingwood is. We had the Woodlands, you know where the Woodlands hit. We had Conroe, Pasadena, Pearland, Baytown. We had in all the surrounding areas in Houston all of these events were well attended. So if normally you have a big city and everybody concentrate in one area, that's not what we had here. We had Katy, Texas, Humboldt, Texas, all these different areas had their own No Kings event, and they were all well attended. And that speaks well about a movement because, you know, the activists will travel into town. But this is a movement that need more than the activists. It actually needs the people that are actually being harmed by the current state of the system. And you know what? I've spoken to them. In my conservative town, the amount of people that I've spoken to, I spoke to at least 35, 40 people on camera. And I'm talking about these weren't Democrats all. These were probably, yeah, 40, 50 to 60% Democrats. But let me tell you, the ones that were Republicans were the ones that either didn't want to speak, or the ones that said they were independents, or the proud ones that said, I can't be a Republican anymore. That was in a minority. But still, the changes there. And you look at the newspapers that covered it, not the newspapers, they didn't cover it, but in Kingwood, but the online links in Kingwood that covered it, you can see the depression within the community when those that are conservatives had to lash back, but the lash back was very small compared to what it used to be in the past.
Well, I regard you as one of the leaders of, what we might affectionately think of under the Big Ten of the umbrella of the Democratic Party. I think that you're somebody who galvanizes and speaks to the issues so brilliantly every chance that you get in so many ways. I don't know how you find enough hours in the day to do it, but I hope as this progresses that more and more people discover you at Politics Done Right and all the platforms from, of course, Substack, which I think is your sort of
Hmm.
central platform, but then of course radio and everything else. And Egberto Willies is really a force of nature. And we saw over the weekend as well. I was really eager actually to see a couple of things. I'm just going to ask you one question at a time to see if we can discuss it and then move to the next one instead of try to throw compound questions at you to try to respond to all of them at the same time. But the first thing that I saw after the our rally, which was 20,000 plus, it was a huge event. It was
Wow.
it was incredibly inspiring. I had the opportunity to speak, as you mentioned, and I remember getting on my phone in the car, and one of the first things that I saw on my social media feeds was that stupid, uh, let's call it AI video of Donald
Hmm.
Trump. And it was trending yesterday, Kenny Loggins' Highway to the Danger Zone, which was, of course, the song on Top Gun. But because Loggins, the writer and performer of that song, had responded negatively. But Donald Trump was dressed up as a Top Gun pilot in an F-15 literally dropping, you know what, out of this
Dung,
plane,
yes.
dung on the people of America. What was your reaction to that?
First of all, to have a president who is going to retweet a picture with him in a pilot suit, a crown on, and dropping dung from a plane. It tells you the lack of seriousness that this guy has for the office. I mean, and then the lack of seriousness that he has for the problem that the people are going through. If when you have this many people protesting, I mean, if you take a look at how Obama or Bush number two handled protests, they didn't like the protests, but the one thing they weren't going to do is make fun of the protesters, even if they think the protesters are ill-advised. They will try to get to the protesters. But this president is a child. This president is an immature child, not a sixth grader, an immature toddler. He gets into tantrums, and if you take a look at how the foreign leaders treat him when they're in his presence, they understand what makes him tick now. So you saw him at the last thing in the Middle East, and you had the president of or the prime minister of Pakistan. I guess it was one of the leaders of Pakistan telling him how great he was for stopping wars that he didn't know, that he didn't stop. And all of them there know it. They laugh at him behind his back, but they know that in order to maybe get the tariffs down on not them, on the American people, which then stops the American people from buying enough of their goods to get all of that down, let's just placate this buffoon of a president that the United States have, and then things will be okay. We are willing to do that, is what the foreigners are saying.
Right. Well, at the same time, though, and I had addressed this on Saturday, but I address this all the time in this podcast, and of course, in everywhere I can get. But you know, I call him the Mad Magazine Mad King. I mean, he is
Yeah.
complete satire. He's a complete joke. I take it much further. I don't like to say he's stupid because that would not rise to the level of stupid. I mean, he's so beyond that. You know what I mean? It's like I said in my speech, he's not qualified to feed pigeons in the
Hmm.
park, and no disrespect to people who feed pigeons in the park. He said 2 weeks ago that Venezuelan drug smugglers have murdered 300 million Americans. He
Yeah.
said that communism has lasted for 1,000 years. And meanwhile, as insane as this all is, he has looted north of $5 billion in the first 9 months. Now, try to make that make sense from where you're coming from. How do you unpack that?
It looks like China is doing a good job of unpacking that on TikTok because as opposed to us preaching why democracy is better for people, we give China a chance to come on TikTok and Instagram and all these places and say, look at our communities. We don't have poverty. We don't have this. We don't have that. And when he talks about Venezuela and how we are blowing stuff out of the waters in Venezuela, China comes around and says, we are in every country and we didn't drop a bomb on any single one of them. And every single one of these countries want us there. I mean, you sit down and you listen to what China is promoting as propaganda right now. And unfortunately, their propaganda is true. Look, these guys are filling the gap that we as a democracy, we as a country that preaches free enterprise should want. Instead, what we have is China showing that their method works too, but not only does it work, but that in the current form, it's working much better for their people and the folks who back them than for our people. And this is a hard thing to say. It's a very hard thing to say. But I ask all of our American brothers and sisters to go ahead and talk to not people on TikTok or whatever, but talk if you have friends who have traveled to places like China, places like South Africa. Ask them, how does the middle class live there? And how is the middle class doing? I'm not asking you to look at the dirt poor that you have both here in the United States and in India and in China and in these other areas, but the middle class, ask about how they're doing, and you'll be amazed. America needs a revamp, and a revamp quickly.
Well, and that's where I've been pressing very hard, and it really, when I had the opportunity to speak to the group in Salt Lake, it was amazing because I had postulated the question after identifying all the problems, right? Like I
Hmm.
was mocking it, and I was really dropping the bombs left
You
and
were
right.
good, man.
Thank you.
The thing about it is I'm trying to cut up some of your video because, but I got to get out some of the words that you're using because I have a family friendly
Sorry
but
about that. Yeah, but
no, 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 oh
I
no,
brought the
no,
heat,
oh
man.
no, no. You did it for the venue. I need to modulate it for another venue. But I want,
Yeah,
when I called you and I said, "Man, I like your speech," I
thank you.
meant that, and I can actually modulate that thing in Premiere.
I love to see it. I can't wait to see what you come up with. And thank you so much for that. That means a great deal to me, especially because I know how busy you are. But what I was experiencing in real time was I remember, basically setting it up, which I loved when it from this perspective. I'm like, have you had enough? And of course, everybody erupts. And I'm like, have you had enough of all of this stuff from Stephen Miller? Have you had enough of this stuff from Mike Johnson? Have you had stuff from Pam Bondi on down the line? And then, of course, I talked about some of those ridiculous things that Trump has been saying outward that nobody calls him on in the White House press corps, which is insanity. And that was really kind of the theme of the whole thing. But when I got to the point where I turned to try to position, next steps, right? I turned, let's say the mic, so to speak, to the audience, and I said,
Mhm.
okay, so what's the plan? Yell out your plan. And at first there was like silence. And then all of a sudden there was this eruption of people like yelling out different things, right? So
Mhm.
everybody has an idea. And I thought that was great. And that set the tone for them to hopefully listen and share and all of those things. But to you, I asked the same question because I think, and this is the reason I wanted to talk to you today. And we only have about 17 minutes left. The nature of what's next, right? So I watched Bernie Sanders deliver a beautiful speech.
Mhm.
But my criticism is that I've heard that speech a lot, right? I know
Mhm.
that speech. I know it intuitively well. And I loved by the way, probably the speech that I heard that I was most inspired by was the immigration sort of perspective of Hakeem, or no, not Hakeem. I'm sorry. The guy, Mehdi Hassan from, and this,
Mehdi is good. Oh man, he's good.
he was magnificent, I thought.
I
And
didn't hear that. Yeah.
okay, I'd really encourage you, or I'll share it to you. I'll find it and I'll share it with you. But on down the line, all of these people. And so what we got to for most of them was what's pretty predictable. And I think the Democratic Party writ large, and this was a bit of an issue for me internally because I've been engaged with the senior leadership of the Salt Lake crowd, or excuse me, Indivisible chapter, and they kicked me up to the Western Regional, which was a
Mhm.
step away from Ezra and Leah. Beautiful
Mhm.
people. I love them. They, as I've said publicly a myriad of times, they kind of remind me of me when I was younger from a technocratic standpoint, right? They work for campaigns. They're professionals. They know how to identify all of the elements that are going to play in things that they get paid for to be able to get somebody elected. Okay, so that's one thing, and I've seen them become a little bit disillusioned over the course of the summer as the lack of impetus by the Democratic Party writ large.
Mhm.
Right, there's a huge vacuum. We know that the polls, that the Democrats are polling as low as Trump, as much or even maybe lower than Trump in some
Yeah.
ways, and this is insane considering how bad things are. And so, I was trying to get the message of what I revealed because you know who I'm working with, which are
Mhm.
tremendous people, and it couldn't break through. And you start to ask your question. I start to ask questions like, okay, who's in control? Who's flying the plane? Who's funding this? Who's allowing the resources to all of these things? And the first thing that pops into my mind is the DNC, which are connected to billionaires. And I'm thinking to myself, and this is what I said in the right in the speech. I said, my friends, the problem is the junk of the billionaires. If you are a junkie, you can't get clean when you feed off the junk that they control you with. And that got a huge response in Salt Lake City. And that's what I'm trying to get around the country. To your point, I mean, I'm sorry. What say you about the lack of, shall we say, a vision and a, shall we say, a platform that is as big as the corruption that enables the stupidity of Trump, while at the same time enabling him to get 5 billion plus in the first 9 months of his of the second term.
What you just said opened the door perfectly. Here is the problem. The problem is that the Democratic Party has a heart. They believe in these programs that help people and they do believe in equity. All those things they do believe in. The problem is the Democratic leadership is of the belief that it's not that they don't think these things are what people want, is that they think the billionaires will not fund Democrats if Democrats started to promote the things that people want. And as such, you get a neutered Chuck Schumer, you get a neutered Hakeem Jeffries, you get a neutered every single one of the 50 Democratic Party establishments in the different states and each of the counties. If you remember, I think it was in Arizona when the progressives took over the party. I think it was Arizona or New Mexico. I think it was Arizona. They went into a fit. They closed bank accounts and they shut them down and they froze them out. The problem is that, yeah, you and I have heard Bernie and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and all the progressives go and give the oligarchy speech and they go get and it's repetitious. Unfortunately, it is true. And with all the work that you have done with the con and all these other issues, CDO, mortgage-backed securities, all of these are tied in together of what we should be rid of, but not even Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer will support the people who are ready to do it. That's why the guy in Maine is being put up against a 79-year-old governor to run for Senate in Maine. That's why we don't have Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries supporting Mamdani, who actually has the support of the people. The people are energized behind guys like Mamdani because finally they see somebody that is speaking to the problems that they have. The Democratic Party has not yet done that because they can't. I'm talking about the leadership now. They can't. And that's why what you do with informing us, with giving us that raw material, that investigative material that have other activists out there, give activists the fertilizer and all of that that they need with that information to put it out there and say, if I need to know why is it that certain things are happening, well, if you take a look at what happened in the con, if you take a look at the New Deal, what New Deal again?
The clean New Deal.
The
Thank you.
clean, the
If you can see
clean,
it,
yeah, it's right there, right looking at me. The clean and understand the nuts and bolts. That's not pretty and not sexy, but's necessary. It is for guys like me and other activists out there to take the unsexy work and attach it to each of the problems that we have in a fashion that people can absorb and do something about it. But it's not going to be the Democratic Party. We are going to have to go beyond the Democratic Party.
well, I appreciate you saying that. And on that note, I'm going to just say, people, if you can see it, if I can get out of the way, the Clean New Deal, you can discover that at thecleannewdeal.org, especially if you get through the con.tv, which is the blueprint for how this works, like Egberto had just described. But Egberto, well, in fact, I'll just finish up with this. If you want to get corruption is the central issue of everything. This attacks corruption in a way with the professionals, the greatest in our country that have done this for 3 decades that I brought to the fore because the entire system from the Department of Justice to SCOTUS to the FBI, et cetera, are completely corrupt in a way that Egberto saw growing up, obviously, and which brought him here from Central America, right? I mean, that's probably a fair assessment to some degree, right? Because it gets when you get the juntas and the military dictatorships and all of those things. But I want to finish this with this real quick because we got 5 minutes, and I want to get your reaction to this. So right now, we are in the midst of not just this global calamity, this sort of fissuring which appears to me that it's the global billionaires in cahoots with Trump to destroy the United States, whatever's going to come next. And there's all sorts of insanity that seems to be emanating from this stupidity that we're in the midst of. But it's the bubbles, okay? We've got they call the Magnificent Seven that are hyper evaluated. You've got AI that's running through the roof. And all of this in service. In fact, I know that there are bank runs right now, particularly as it relates to the shadow sector, and they are blowing up all over the place. In fact, in my backyard, one of the biggest heavyweight banks that has, I thought, was pretty much unsinkable, it has just had to write off like 600 million in bad loans in commercial real
Wow.
estate development, and that's just a sign of train wrecks to come. But I want people to understand, because I've informed you, Egberto, but everybody needs to get hip to this as quickly as possible. It's a setup. It's a sabotage. It's a pump and dump scheme of enormous consequences, maybe the biggest in the history of the world. And what these people are banking on, for those of you who've paid attention to Trump trying to take over the Federal Reserve, and Letitia James, and of course Lisa Cook, and so on and so forth. Listen, 13 years ago, what we discovered was, after Wall Street, working on the same kind of fraud, blew up the world, they're the ones who got paid off tens of trillions of dollars illegally. If they've got complete control of the system, and none of us know how the system works, they do this to set us up because they can squeeze profits, like squeezing blood from a turnip, sort of thing, or however that metaphor goes. And when it all blows up because of their stupidity, because of their criminality, because of their corruption and the revolving door, they've got money baked on all of our collective value. You need to understand that, America. I give you the last word on this.
I mean, look, tariffs have been used to play the markets. Just before the last tariff Donald Trump claimed to put on China, the new 100% tariff on China, a friend of his supposedly made billions by shorting and making a whole lot of money on that. The payment to Brazil of $40 billion, there are a lot of people that were banking on the
Argentina.
Argentina. Yeah, exactly. Argentina. There were a lot of people banking on Argentina being successful with right-wing policies. As it started to cave, all those investors were going to lose their money. There comes the money to Argentina for the bailout, the beef that I don't know if you heard the beef story. I covered that this morning. The beef is very high in the United States. Instead of helping with the input costs to the beef producers, now we are going to be importing beef, a whole lot of beef from Argentina to reduce the prices of beef in the United States, which means the profit the cattle the ranchers are getting is going to fall again. And who's going to continue making the money? The meat processors. So, I mean, the capitalists, I know we have issues in the way I use that word, but I'm going to tell you, folks, the con that my brother here speaks about all of the time is on. The tariffs is a con. The bailout of Argentina is a con. The immigration scheme is a con, and people don't get it. They don't understand that the immigration scheme is just there to perk up the billionaires who own the prison industrial complex, the food industrial complex, to feed the immigrants that are in jail, to house the immigrants that are in jail, to fly the immigrants and move them around. All these are businesses making money using immigrants as the cog. It's all a con to make money, and they use people's prejudices to actually do it.
And what I was just saying, look, you're right about everything. My interpretation of it is it's monopoly, predatory capitalism built on criminality that we have laws to rein in. But when it all blows up because of this insane, you just have to think of these guys as drug dealers and the way drug dealers deal with their clients, or if they're a pimp and they deal. I mean, these are the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst criminals, and they're getting away with it. And not only are they getting away with it, they can. And I know you don't like this term, but I have to say it out loud. It's socialism for criminals. That's what I'm
Mhm.
telling you. because the Federal Reserve can give them tens of trillions of dollars. And that's what this play is. Putin's in on it. I know it for a fact. I've watched this through the lens. And the last thing about, interestingly enough, and I want to just say this because you'll appreciate this. And I'd encourage anybody who watches Egberto to spread this around in Texas too, for farmers or anybody in the agricultural industry to reach out to me. I've had a lot of, let's say, MAGA leaning type of, salt of the earth Americans that have, ranches and farms and that sort of thing. And they are getting destroyed by the tariffs and the
Hmm.
soybeans. And now they're like, oh my God, the sky is falling. So what you and I know is that Americans, unfortunately, are very selfish, right? That we don't really care about what happens unless it happens to us, and then when it
Hmm.
happens to us, we yell bloody murder. What I'm telling you is, we've been dealing with this for 14 years, my friends. This has got to end. We've got the answers. Our friends like Egberto are tremendous vectors of truth every single day. Please check out Egberto Willies on Politics Done Right and everything that you do. And you always grace me with your presence and your wisdom, Egberto, and I consider you such a great friend. Thank you for your time this morning, my man.
Thank you so kindly for having me. And again, we got to keep doing this. We have work to do.
Thank you so much. All the best. Have a great day, man. I'll talk to you
You
soon.
too.
All right.